Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a flip through of my RPG Club journal. So at school I've been running RPG Club for several years, and for the past I think 5 years it's been the same group of kids. So I had that group of students when they were in year 9, then year 10, year 11, and then when they were in year 12 I think we stopped for that year and then restarted when they were in year 13. And for that, because we started quite late, I wanted something short, so we did a Kids on Bikes campaign. And I found this map on Reddit. If I can find it again, I will link it below. That's something I did not make, but I took all of these locations from this map and I created backgrounds for every single one of them to have them as options if they would go. So I had the map list first. I sent them the map as well so they know what places there were in this town, and then I listed everything that was there. You will see in the notebook a lot of collages. The ones with the locations, while we were playing, I only had the image of the location there, and then for each location I put information. So on the right you will see the information in black, and in English would be what the kids would be told. If they said we're going to this place, I would tell them that information. Then if there was a secret that they weren't supposed to know, because I would show them the pages to look at the pictures, to read anything they needed. If something was a secret, I would switch to Greek, and that's something that I do when I run RPG Club, so that they can see the pages, see the preparation, see the notes, but not actually find out all the secrets. So I do that, and I think if you speak another language that your group or your students, they don't speak that, that's a great way for you to keep all your notes together. And then you'll see on these pages where I have some washi tapes, some stickers. This is something I did after the end of the campaign, where I went back and wrote kind of the aftermath for the town, what happened either after the characters interacted with that location based on what happened in the story, or if they didn't interact with that, what kind of happened to this place and the people that I had created to be there. And some of them, it was about the town power dynamics. So the lounge there and some of the shops, they never really interacted with the people, with the shopkeepers, with that kind of part of the community at all. So I just decided, like, what would these people have done while everything else was happening. On the other hand, the players really wanted to explore the military base, the hospital, and some of the entertainment parts, so the fairground, the arcade, and there were things that happened there because of that. So the whole premise of this campaign was, it was a Stranger Things sequel. So after the completion of the series of Stranger Things, 10 years later, about in the 90s, mid-90s, the army decides to relaunch the experiment and reopen gates to the other world. So there are none of the original characters, but I did keep the demo dogs and the demogorgons and the eggs. And instead of Vecna, I created my own villain. So there were a lot of places in the town that were either polluted, like this one for example, and you would see that in the water it would either turn black and red. The water itself was getting more and more polluted and corrupted. So the more you drank from it, the more contamination you had in your body. And then because Kids on Bikes is a system that allows for superpowers, and it's supposed to be that kind of thing, like young kids get superpowers somehow, I made it so when you go to 100% of the contamination, that is what triggered your powers. So at first they didn't know what it was. They saw me kind of noting down the corruption levels, but until the first one got powers out of it, they hadn't realized, so they were trying to avoid it, which was really funny. And then after, they were trying to get as much of the contamination as possible to actually get the superpowers. So it was quite interesting. So that was the premise, and then some places in the town were directly involved with the gates, with the army, with the conspiracy, with getting everybody contaminated and experimented on, whereas there were other places that there was a secret cult, there were witches, there was a group of underground criminals, there were supposed to be tunnels under the town, and smuggling, and a lot of other things depending on where the players investigated. So they went for the main storyline for the most part, even though they went to the locations completely out of order from what I had originally designed, and that's why I think it's important to have this kind of planning, because you might think we are starting here and we're gonna go to the next location, and then they just go completely elsewhere, and that's something I think most DMs know. You spend a lot of time planning for something and then the players completely ignore it. So on this page, for example, I had made a list of plot points and plans and ideas of what was going to happen, and if they are ticked, that means we did do that plot point, but there are some that are not ticked at all because they never actually checked it. So for example, one of the things was there were demo dog eggs, and if they found an egg early on, if they had gone to that place straight away and found it and interacted with it, I would have let them at least attempt to keep a demo dog as a pet, but they didn't get there until like the very end, and they just destroyed it straight away. So I might have some options, but they will not be available at all times. To keep track of everything, I made this little calendar. This is an accurate October 1995 calendar, and this was supposed to be happening towards break from school, so they could go investigate, and then next to it I put which session each of the calendar days covers, and then that's in the red the tracker of the contamination and then what power they got. So I need it to be clear so that I know, is it a Sunday? Would something change if it is that date? If they took longer and school reopened, then something else would have happened. And then a huge tip that I would completely recommend is taking your players' character sheets and making a table like that. A lot of them forgot the character sheets half the time, and it was just easier to have it all on one page. I refer to it, they refer to it, and so it just made everyone's life easier to know which die to roll off, what they had in their backpacks, and it was a really helpful page. We looked at it all the time. And then every single session I would write what would happen. I had some pictures that would be relevant to what I was planning, but then if they did something different, then there's just text. So that's why some sessions have more pictures, some if they have pictures at the end, that meant they did something that I then had to find some pictures for, just for a visual and to help them as well, to aid with their visuals. So I made codes, I had the character sheets for the Demogorgons, for the scientists, for the military, for anything that they might come across, and then I would make some signs, things that they might need to know what they look like, and that was really fun. So anything written in black in this are my notes and plans that I would usually do at the beginning of a session, and that would be, this is how like the new day starts, or you go to this location and this is what's happening right now. Anything they were doing I was writing in blue, so if you are pausing and checking and reading the different pages, if there's spelling mistakes in the blue, is because I was writing in a rush while also running the game. And then the few phrases in red is when they got powers, so I would just write that so I know when somebody got powers, what that power was. So most of it is written in blue. Some of the things are really like prepared, or I would write when the day changed so I could keep track of the time. Certain things I was timing very closely, especially towards the end. There was gonna be a nuke. If they didn't close the gates by a certain time, because it was our last like 2 sessions, they would finish school, they would go to university, and I had to finish this campaign. I couldn't put it off, so it had to end one way or another on like that last couple of sessions. I even had them come in for an extra week after their exam because we couldn't finish on this session we were supposed to. They were all happy to do so. So they just came, we played the last session, and then they left, and we were crying. Never mind that. It was really nice. It was 7 years of teaching these kids, 5 years of playing, so it was a lot. But yeah. Besides that, anyway, the point is I wanted to be really accurate with my timings and kept a really good track of that. So by the end, there's this gate that is open, the Phoenix has come through, half the people are obeying it, the other people are trying to run and hide, the army is saying they're gonna nuke the town, the kids have split in 2 groups and they are fighting each other. By the end, 2 killed each other, and then they managed to close the gates. The Phoenix escapes somewhere on Earth so that it can return if they ever wanted to run this on their own and do a continuation. There is always that possibility for them to go off and play. I know they're all going to different cities for the next few years, but they're still friends and they do play D&D on their own online since we've done our club the past few years. So I wanted to leave that open for them, that if they wanted to take those characters again, run it themselves, they can still do that. So we finished our campaign. That was where I wrote like the end. Oh, I wrote in red when somebody died as well, so it stands out. And then on the next page I had each of them write what their character would do past the end of the campaign. So I wanted to have a nice memento, so it's them with their own handwriting, and they wrote me what their characters would have done, and then I did a short reflection about the club itself, and that completed this notebook. Let me know what you thought. I would really like to hear your comments on all of that, if you do the same, if you're thinking of running a club like that, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye!